Welcome back to the Athlete's Edge Coaches Edition podcast, your front row seat to learning from experts who are leading the way in sports coaching. Our mission is to introduce you to impactful coaches from every sport so you can provide the best support for your student athletes and provide them with the best opportunities as they look to advance their sporting careers. I am super excited to introduce to you today our special guest, Simon Cross, head coach of Old Glory DC, and they specialize, I love this, in safe tackling technique, specifically rugby and football, whatever it is, it's great stuff. Simon, it is fantastic to have you here. Thrilled to chat with you.
Tony, thank you so much. I feel very humbled with the intro. I've certainly not something I ever thought of as, all the lovely things you just said, but I appreciate your time and great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I love this conversation. As a former rugby player myself, back in England, we used to have Americans come over and I used to watch them go into challenges and it would be like, oh, that's going to hurt. So I can't wait to jump into this. So can you give us a snapshot of your coaching program and some of its major outcomes?
Yeah, the coaching program we are one of the 12 or 11 sides now. We lost a side last year. We're one of the 11th side to the Major League Rugby, which is the professional arm of rugby in North America. There are 6 teams in the Eastern Conference, and there are 5 teams now in the Western Conference. So, we have a 6-month season from January all the way through to the end of June. It's a very American model with a draft. It's an East Coast versus West Coast, and the winner of each one plays for the equivalent of the Super Bowl. But it's a fully professional league, and it's a bit of a startup league. It's only been going for 7 or 8 years, but the quality is really, really high. And now you've got really good athletes. You've got great UK rugby players coming over here to apply their trade in the MLR. So it's exciting times to be a part of.
That's awesome. I love the fact that it's growing out here. It's such a fun sport to play and be a part of. You mentioned before we started recording that you're also getting into youth. Tell me more about that, because that's an interesting space to get into over here in the rugby space.
I mean, it is. It's a really interesting space because it's not something that's been coached a lot. If you think about the typical American sports around basketball, baseball, football, now soccer, we are very much a fledgling sport. Rugby should be a really big American sport. I mean, so there's a huge history of old UK-based sports in the US. And actually, I think rugby could really be a sport that the Americans can get to grips with in terms of the physicality, the collision-based side of things. They love a playoff, which is what we've got as well. So I think it's an exciting opportunity for a new sport to sort of come in and try and find its way in North America.
Yeah, and you specialize in the safe tackling side of things. And you mentioned again before the call, you're actually looking to cross over and get into some of the local high schools to teach them, not just in rugby, but in football as well. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, I like you to ask a question around the use of things. It's how can rugby expose itself and try and gain some of the sort of a bit more recognition around the more traditional American sports. And one of the ways we try to do that is we've reached out to a bunch of local high schools and some of the colleges. We've there's no big secret. Football struggling with CTE, concussion issues at the moment, and a lot of that is you stick a helmet on someone, you stick a bunch of pads on them, and they feel invincible. So technique goes out the window, and emotion and physicality become the drivers, particularly around defence. What I see is incredibly physical boys and men and girls now playing rugby, but I see a real lack of technique around the area, especially. And rugby's been doing this for nearly 180 years. So we're pretty good at tackling, and we know without helmets, without pads, how to protect ourselves. So what we've tried to do is reach out to some of these local schools, high schools, colleges, and say, hey, let us in, let us show you how to be more effective, let us show you how to be safer. And a bunch of these coaches in these schools have really sort of taken us under their wing and allowed us in and helping them on a monthly basis at the moment, which is really, really, it's great when two sports meet and coaches get to talk about different techniques and ideas and different ways of doing stuff. And it's been really fun. It's been a really fun off season for me.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And give us a little bit of background of you, because you've got quite the background in the rugby world. Where did you come from?
Well, well, I, I was a military son. Dad was in the army, he's a career soldier. I was born in Mauritius, of all places, and then I moved to Germany. I went to a boarding school because we moved house so often. And Central School's a very famous old rugby school in the northwest of England. I was lucky enough to go there for 5 years, and I really learned my craft there, I suppose. And then after that, I was meant to join the army. I had an army scholarship to kind of follow the old man into that side of things. So I ended up playing in a game of rugby where somebody watching one of the Premiership sides is a gap, and he saw the game and he kind of approached after and said, "What are you up to? And where are you going next? And who be signed for?" Because I was one of the very first, I was one of the very first schoolboys out of school to be allowed to become professional. Because rugby only turned professional in about 1997, and I finished school in 1999. It wasn't really it wasn't something that we thought we could do as kids. We had to think about our next career in a relationship. But anyway, I played this game, played quite well. And then out of the blue, I was offered a contract to join the Wasps in London, who were quite a big Premiership side back then. And I did have an army scholarship to go to Sandhurst. And 26 years later, I still haven't quite managed to get there. Because I ended up going to Wasps, and then I played for Edinburgh for 10 years, and now I'm coaching in the US, and so my rugby journey is still going.
Okay, so you've got a very cool career, great story. What are some of the core beliefs that guide you in approaching coaching the professional level that you are, but also on building strong mindsets within athletes, young athletes, and helping them move into this sport?
What a great question. So when I was a player, I had 10 years at Edinburgh, and all the way through that kind of playing career, I knew that I wanted to coach. It was a weird thing. I loved the game. I had a real love for the game. I think that's the most important thing, because if you don't love the game, I think athletes can see through you quite quickly. So I had a real love for the game. I ended up playing and then coaching on a Tuesday and a Thursday at the lowest level in Scotland at the time. And that didn't matter to me at all. It was just cutting my teeth in coaching and learning how to deliver a session. And I mean, there was one point where we had, it was the floodlights went out, and we ended up with the cars with their headlights on and around the side of the field, so you could just keep the session going. And the most important piece of kit wasn't necessarily any of the rugby stuff. It was the jump leads that would start the student's car whose batteries just ran out, that kind of stuff. It was all those great little stories and anecdotes. But I knew I wanted to coach it. And again, like I said to you in the last piece, I was really lucky. It's a bit like the Malcolm Gladwell stories. It's right place, right time. I was one of the first kids out of school to become professional. I was one of the first professionals to retire to then go into coaching. And the SRU, which is the Scottish Rugby Union, he threw a lot of resource into me as one of the first retiring guys who knew they wanted to coach. And they gave me opportunities with the Scotland 18 side, the Scotland 20 side. We managed to link the Scotland 18s and 20s defence to the national team. So we had this kind of pathway in Scotland at the time around defence where we were all coaching the same things. And it just grew from there. And after 2 or 3 years of doing that, I was offered a job with the Worcester Warriors in the Premiership in England. That then led me to Wales in the Dragons in the United Rugby Championship, which is a professional league that plays the South Africans and the Italians, and it's a big league in the UK. And then I'm out here now. But I think the key thing all the way through that was a love of the game and just really specializing in a certain area. So defense was my thing. I loved defense. It's what I was pretty good at as a player. And I thoroughly enjoyed working with young athletes in terms of technique and tactics and growing their knowledge and their skill set in order to give them the best possible chance of a pro.
Excellent. When you think about these young athletes, obviously they're playing and there's the mindset within the sport, but then what about developing that mindset outside the sport? How do you help them outside the sport with that same kind of mindset techniques?
So I often find that with certainly younger athletes, but even guys I've got at the moment, there are two types of athlete. You have the emotional athlete and you have the technical. And the emotional athlete has a very little or very limited amount of technical or tactical retention. He just wants to go out in a physical sport like rugby or ice hockey or football. He just wants to go out, or she wants to just whack them. And that's what they That's what they're about. But their physicality is their game. Then you've got the technical, tactical athlete who sees the game, understands if their right foot goes there and their left foot goes there, then they're more likely to make a cleaner tackle or a better pass. So the biggest challenge for me as a coach with these youngsters is sometimes one of these technical athletes, the answer isn't about the technique. It's some of these guys are looking for an answer to an emotional problem. The bottom line is there's a level of physicality in these sports that you have to match. Don't try and solve an emotional problem, which is just get out and be physical and be tough and work hard, with a technical solution, and this vice versa. For an emotional guy, I need them just to understand, actually, I need to just stand here and do this and make this play at this time, rather than just think, well, I'm going to go out and just try and cut somebody in half. Those sorts of things don't work. So it's that fine balance of technique and emotion, and trying to give youngsters the best possible tools to answer those problems.
That's really cool. I like how you explain the two different types, emotional and tactical, because in any sport there is that, right? There's the brute force, and then there's that little technique and tactical type of player. It reminds me a lot of the kids that I coach that I wouldn't have put those words to, but now I've got words that I can use, so I might steal them.
Well, a great graphic is if you get the old tipping scales, and you've got emotion and you've got detail. The bottom line is when you're in a team game, especially team game, anything that slows you down because you're thinking about too much detail is never a good thing. In the same way that over an emotional state will actually cause you real problems, because you end up making a hit that's illegal, or you end up with penalty count goes through the roof, or so discipline falls away, or whatever it is. Like, you've just got to find that balance between the two, and recognizing which player needs which response. And it's the same thing at halftime. How many times do you get in a halftime locker room and you're like, what do I say? I don't actually know what to say. And I often check myself, because I don't tell anyone, but sometimes like, I haven't got a clue what's going on in the first half. I'm like, I don't know what the response should be. I don't know what to say. But actually, if I pick as long as I know, if I need an emotional response at half time, because I need to get a lift emotionally out of my players, I can use my language, my body language, the words that I use. Versus sometimes if it needs a detailed response, I'll be a lot calmer. I'll sit on a bucket in the middle of change rooms and we'll talk about detail. And having that balance between emotion and detail, I think as a coach, is really important.
Yeah, it is. I was actually going to ask you what advice that you would give a young coach coming into any coaching environment within sports. What's one thing that you would tell them? I mean, that obviously knowing, emotion and technical, but what else?
Be comfortable not knowing. Be comfortable with a player asking you a question you don't know the answer to, and rather than try and feed them a line of which isn't something you believe in or you don't have an answer to, just say, hey, I don't know. And I think that actually enhances your credibility. In the same token, don't try and show them how much stuff you know. Keep the message really simple. And as the group grows, you can add more of your own detail in as it goes along. So I think as a young coach, I definitely tried to show everybody how much stuff I knew and how energetic I was and all this other stuff. But actually, it would have been a lot more practical for me just to take a step back, take a breath, and just deliver stuff slowly through the course.
Yeah. And that's fantastic for coaches to know. We go in, especially as a young coach, thinking that we've got to have all of the answers and know everything. When in fact, as a coach, mentor, teacher, the better experience is to be part of the learning with your team, to be in there. And I think to be saying when you don't know those things, that's a great question. Let's go find out together type of deal, right? How could we solve that problem? I have so many players come up to me and say, what do I do in this situation? And I'm like, I don't know. What can you do in that situation? And I try and help them kind of learn through that as well. It's important.
Yeah, I agree. And the question side of things is really important. So don't ask too many closed questions. Get the questions rather than say, give a yes or no answer. Ask, well, how would you do that? Or why do you think this is important? And get them to kind of answer themselves. But I just think being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
You're in that job because you're good enough and you're bad. And the other thing as well is never be afraid of bringing people in who don't feel uncomfortable in that space. Just you, an older coach with more experience, bring another voice into the group that maybe is a specialist scrum coach for us or a specialist line-out coach, because I can't be all things to all people. I was a flanker in rugby, which means that I don't have, 100 games worth of experience standing on the wing. So I don't know necessarily what that feels like. I can tell you exactly what it feels like to be in the middle of a scrum or in a ball, and it's horrible. But I can't tell you what the backfield feels like when the ball's swirling around and you're trying to catch a high ball, because I was never really there. So don't try and pretend you do know these things. It's like, hey, I don't know. I'll go and find somebody who does, or we'll bring someone in who can help you with that, or help those youngsters find their own answer, because your principles of your game are so solid that actually it helps create those answers for them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It's a great answer. So can you share some of the strategies that you might use that go beyond the typical playbook? You're a defense coach, you work on safe tackling, but what are some of those strategies that go beyond that typical playbook that connects the athlete, right, with the sport and with life? Is there anything you've got there?
Yeah, I think it's important to have your own idea of how the game is played. You got in front of you. So if you take the American guys, for example, the American boys that I've got in my group, bear in mind, Old Glory are trying to be the most American side in the MLR, Major League Rugby, and we're 70% American. Therefore, I have to adapt my techniques, my tactics to the group I've got in front of me without compromising my beliefs. But the thing I'm really lucky about, one of the reasons I took the job here from the job in Wales, is because I fundamentally believe that the group we've got reflect the things that I believe or how the game should be played. So Americans are incredibly fit. They are incredibly physical and very coachable. What the problem I've got, or the issues that we run into, is that they haven't run around with a rugby ball since they were 5 years old. They've had baseballs, basketballs, footballs, whatever it is. So the level of skill or tactical knowledge or whatever it is, isn't necessarily one that is synonymous with a free-flowing, wide game, and it's something that's much more straight line, physical, chase, defense orientated, effort driven game, which you might not necessarily see the All Blacks playing, but actually it's something that we should be trying to encourage the American side to be playing. So look at what you've got, understand the athletes that you have, and try and drive a game plan that helps to suit the majority of your team, as opposed to what you've seen on TV, or how the best team in the world are playing, or Messi does it this way in soccer, so we're going to try and do that. It's like, nah, like, what have you got in your group that's going to work, and be comfortable with that?
Yeah. Play with the cards that you've got. Yeah, play with the cards that you've been dealt.
100%.
So on that note then, how would you describe the perfect athlete that comes to you around the game of rugby? Not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally. Describe that to me.
So I would go straight down the route of effort and discipline. If you can show me effort, so if you can show me 2 or 3 things in a row that you can do when we have the ball or when we haven't got the ball, that's just awesome. That's like, those are the off the ball moments. Those are this is what I'm doing when nobody's watching style things that we can do in training, whether it's in the gym, whether it's off feet conditioning, or we recognize it on the field. So here's a clip of us scoring a try, but check out this guy who's run 50 meters to clear a breakdown no one's seen, for us to get the ball to then score the try. So those are the things that we're trying to do. The discipline side of things is, well, how do we behave every day to make sure that we give away the least penalties on the field, that we're on time, we've got our books, we're working hard together as a group. It's all those sorts of things are really important too.
Yeah, I love that. I played multiple sports in my days. I was never very good at any of them. I wasn't like the best at them, but I worked hard. That's one thing that I always did, was work hard. Very few people outworked me on the field.
Do you know what? If you've got 15 or 20, a squad of 23 guys who are doing the same thing, you go a long way. Yeah. Someone said to me that, what's the quote I heard, that effort outworks talent when talent doesn't work. And I'm like, you know what? I love that. And one of the other things that we work on is that, defense creates offense. So if you look at it from that side of things as well, it's like everything we do is loaded towards, okay, how are we going to get the ball back? How are we going to create pressure? How are we going to squeeze the opposition and challenge them mentally as well? So that's kind of where we're coming from, but it suits that American mindset as well. So, it's not, as you said, it's the cards that you're dealt. How can we get the best out of those?
Yeah. So changing things up a little bit, if you could go back in time, What would you say to your young athlete self?
I always say look after your body more.
Yeah.
I just I didn't look after myself enough as a youngster. I didn't do enough for the prehab side of things. I ended up with a lot of injuries around ribs, necks and shoulders and stuff. And it was like if I'd done more work off the field and understood really about putting time and effort into my body, I could have played for another 2, 3, 4 years probably. And then the other one would have been just keep studying the game, really understand the game, because I think the game slows down for you the more you watch, the more you're aware. And I think if I knew then what I know now about the game, I would have been a pretty good player. But I didn't understand enough about what was going on in front of me.
And the question then is always, how do you teach young athletes those lessons? Because they are so important, not just in looking after your body, but just understanding more of the game and what's going on behind them. How do you teach them that?
I think you provide opportunity for them on video analysis, create a pretty basic game plan and keep going back to, well, how does my game plan look and what have you seen there? I think not necessarily becoming completely athlete centered. I think the coach has got to lead on these things for the youngsters because you don't know what you do. So it's like, hey, what are our principles? How do we speed the game up? How do we slow the game down if we need to? Teach them about the different ways that teams play, expose them to different ways of training and playing. And I think all of those to understand whether they learn best through listening, through watching, through the game in different ways.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that answer. Again, I want to change things up a little bit now about parents. What's the most valuable role parents can play in supporting their child's journey in sports, especially when it comes to that mental and emotional game?
I think the key word you just used there was sport. I think let the coaches coach. Let the kids enjoy. Let them fall in love with the game. But I think the key role for parent is to support. The thing I'm most proud of with what we've done so far with Old Glory is we've created a coaches club. So an Old Glory coaches club where they've turned up, they paid $250 to be part of this club where they have access to a WhatsApp group with all of the professional coaches. They're allowed to come onto the field when we're coaching the under 18 and under 16 team and listen to how we're problem solving. We'll give them a session plan before the session so they understand what we're coaching and why. And then afterwards, we have a sort of feedback on what do you see. So I think trying to raise the level of coaching and take the dad that's really, really keen, trying to take him away from just looking at the son to just actually understanding the whole picture, just zoom out a bit, see what's important and why, as opposed to just being the guy on the sideline that's sort of firing shots at the coaches for not picking their son or not playing the right tactics or whatever it is. But I think trying to get those guys involved and trying to raise the level of coaching, I think is really important.
I love that idea of a coaches club. So who's invited to join that? Who can be a part of that?
So for us, anybody within the DMV, I mean, we've had coaches who are 75 miles away joining this. But what it's done is we gave them a season ticket as part of the package. We then exposed everyone to a WhatsApp group. We have a monthly call where they can ask us any questions they want on a Zoom call. And then in the season, they've got a separate section in the stands for the home games of Glory. They can come and watch us train live in sessions in pre-season, and they can just see how we do things. So, when they see us with a U14s group coaching fun, they see us with a U18 group coaching technique, and then they see us with a U23 group in the fall coaching much more tactical stuff. So there's a progression through the fall, which we hope to kind of just educate them in terms of how we see the game. And then once the pro season starts, they're able to come in and see how a sessions run properly and, how many meters per second people are running and how long sessions go for and all that kind of stuff. But they've also have access to our strength and conditioning coaches, our video analysis guys. So it's just a way of trying to get the community really in behind Old Glory and educate these guys who are paying $250 are now invested in us and want to learn more and want to be better themselves. So yeah, we're really proud of that. And yeah, it's worked incredibly. We've got 33 guys signed up.
That is phenomenal. That is such a good idea because it brings, potential sideline hecklers into the mix of what's going on. And I also love what you said, and I've got to highlight this. the U14s, what you said about the U14s was fun. And then as you progress through the ages, it was technical, tactical, and all of that good stuff. I think a lot of people in today's era lose the idea that those younger ages, hey, it's supposed to be just fun. We don't need to be super competitive at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Let them have fun.
100%. Let them fall in love with the game. That's the key thing. Fall in love with the game, and then the rest of it, they're putty in your hands. You can do whatever you can mold them into whatever you see fit in any position and any way of playing. But I think they've got to love the game. And like I said to you before, the challenge I have is that these young boys and girls haven't grown up in the same way that I did at 5, 6, 7 with a rugby ball. They've grown up with baseballs and basketballs and footballs, and we have to hook them at as early an age as we can to get them to love rugby and think, oh, this is a great sport. And so we've got to be pretty clever how we do. But so fun is definitely the U14, U12 model, the younger glory. And then the young glory kids are okay, here's now the techniques that we need to go employ, and this is what the professionals do, and these are the drills that we use. And then once we get to the senior academy, okay, now this is how we chase kicks, this is how we defend in shape and attack in shape. And come and watch. Now you guys can come and watch what we do with the senior team. And oh, by the way, it's all the stuff you're doing. Yeah, not rocket science. But yeah, and that's the other thing. When you get to pro sport, everybody thinks there's a magic bullet, and there's not. There's no silver bullet. It's like, it's just the simple things done really well under pressure. And if we can get to that point, we're in a good space.
Yep. Yeah, that's fantastic. I haven't shared this before because you're the first rugby coach that I've spoken to, but I run a juvenile hall program. I work with the kids in a local juvenile hall, and I'm teaching them life skills and leadership skills and, all of that good stuff. And I do it through sports. And one day I went in there and I had a rugby ball. My brother gave me one when he came over here. So I took the rugby ball in and I taught these kids in juvenile hall how to play rugby. It was one of the funniest fun days I've had in juvenile hall, because you're right, these kids had no idea how to hold the line and think of passing the ball back behind the line, right? Because all they wanted to do was go forward and run forward, and I was like, whoa, come back.
Love it. That's awesome. I just exposing them to a rugby ball. So the safe tackle clinics that we're running is, I don't let them run with footballs. I make them run with rugby balls, so that we're not. This isn't a rugby session, but oh, by the way, this is a rugby ball, and this is how we tackle. So they're straight away they're thinking, oh, it's a different sport, but it's got but it's good for ours as well. So I'm just trying to brainwash people in different ways. But if you run into a high school football program and go, hey, everyone come and play rugby, everyone looks at you as if you're mad. If you go in and go, hey, I'm going to teach you a safe, effective tackle, which is going to help your secondary make better tackles in the backfield, and you're going to make your completions, and you're not going to give up all these yards. Suddenly I was like, okay, I'm listening now. In the same way that our kickers, if we've got our kicking coaches working with the punters and the kickers for, field goal kickers, like suddenly, like, rugby's been kicking for years and years and years. Like, we've got the best kicking coaches in the world. And so suddenly everyone's like, oh, rugby has a value with football. And I think the people who are going to change football are going to be the mums. The mums are going to stop their kids playing football whilst the helmet-to-helmet stuff keeps going on. And if we can just help keep kids safe, give them a better technique from a tackling point of view, and expose people to some rugby language as well, the chances are, I'm hoping that these kids come and ask a few more questions at the end of the session and go, hey, where's my local club? How can I get involved in rugby? That's the big aim for us.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I love that. There's actually, so I'm here in California, and there's rugby's getting big here in some of the high schools. Spoke to several dads whose kids are playing. The local club here is called the Rhinos, I think. And I've watched them out there, and it's really cool to see this sport that I've grown up to love, back in England, coming out over here. It's fantastic.
It's just a wonderful sport. One of the best. Someone once told me that rugby doesn't make character, it shows it. And it's such a true saying. It's like, it's such a difficult, tough team sport. It's probably the best team sport in the world, because you have to play offense, you have to play defense, and you have to be disciplined and fit, and everybody's got their role, whether you're 6'20" or you have 400 pounds. Everybody's got a role, and that's the best thing about it. And I love that saying, because it's so true, and it suits the American. That's the crazy thing about it. It's like, it suits the American psyche, the American athlete. And we've got the World Cup in 2031 around the corner here. There's a home World Cup in America. I'm looking at this group of players that I've currently got and just looking at them, especially the 24, 25-year-olds, as well, which one of you guys is going to be representing your country in a home World Cup, which is something that not many people can say they can do.
Yeah, fantastic. You're doing great work. I love it. So what's the biggest obstacle you've ever had to overcome and one lesson that you learned from it?
I think the disappointments. Well, this is a great question. Okay, I'm going to give you two answers. One was injury, was just brutal. And you play the game you love, and then as a professional player, the highs are incredibly high, but the lows are unbelievably low. So you're injured, you're not playing, you're not selected, your contract's coming up. It's just a really difficult place to live and be. But when the highs are high, they're great. So that was a struggle that no one ever talks to you about when you're a 20-year-old just playing every weekend and loving it, and you're always picked. So when you go into the pro ranks and you're suddenly the third choice, fourth choice, that's really difficult to deal with. And I struggle with that. I struggle with injury. So getting over that or learning to deal with the disappointments in pro sport really hard. As a coach, and I've only just found it this year, as a technical coach, so the last 10 years I've spent as a defensive coach in the professional ranks in the UK across a couple of different teams. You have a really easy, lovely relationship with the players. And I like people. So, I would often have a beer with the players after a game, or I would have a coffee with them during the week, or just chat. We'd have really good relationships. And then as a head coach, you walk into the room and everybody stops talking. And almost overnight, you've gone from being the, I don't want to say popular coach, but the guy that's got really strong personal relationships with players to suddenly the guy that is just delivering bad news to people every day or is in charge of your future. And I've spent a year really wrestling with that. I found that really hard. That's been quite tough. And it's not something that comes easily to me because I'm not a bad bloke. I struggle. I wrestle with those decisions to release a player or to, select and sits heavy with me. And, I get how disappointed people are because I had those feelings myself. But to be the guy that just becomes the bad guy all the time is quite tough. That's quite hard work.
Yeah. And you bring up some great points there, both of those hard, but young athletes need to hear those things, right? They need to hear everything that you just said there because they are going to get injured and they are going to get sat on the bench and they are going to be let go of different situations. And then they think that it's one way up, but it's never a straight line and to the right. It's always an up here, a down here, an up here, and a down here. And there are struggles. And even coaches, right? We sit there and go, I want to be head coach one day, right? But then do you really? Do you want to carry that burden? Or do you just want to go and have some fun with the kids? Because I know what I'd rather have. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that because it's important that people hear that.
But it also loops back to your question earlier, Tony, where it's like, what is the role of the parent? And we talked about support. That's where, particularly for those younger athletes, I don't work with a huge amount of young athletes anymore. I've had my time with the 18s and the under 20s in Scotland, and a lot of those guys went on to make the pro ranks. But again, probably 75% of them didn't. And the role of the parent there is to pick them up, to keep them balanced, to not overextend their talents or their expectations. It's just to keep downplaying it without killing their spirit. That's a really important one. So that's a really difficult balance as a parent. Is I don't encourage too much, but also don't strip the spirit out of the kid as well. So that's tough. That's a really tough one.
Yep, it is. As a parent myself, I know exactly that feeling. I've got two young soccer players and they're great, but then I'm also sitting there going, but take it easy, keep going, but don't get too excited.
I'll tell you what I'm noticing, and this is probably over the course of the last 20 years. Do you know when you get to the very top of the game, from let's say an under 18, a U18 player, it's not actually the most talented kid that ends up making it. It tends to be the most balanced. It tends to be the harder worker. It tends to be the mentally tougher who can deal with rejection or whatever. That's the kid that often makes the cut as opposed to the superstar 17, 18-year-old who can't deal with stuff that goes wrong and just ends up trying to fix stuff on the field by doing something even more crazy and it just ends up being an absolute disaster. So I'd be, it's everyone's pretty good at that level. The one that kicks on is the one that's just got that ability to deal with pressure because of the grounding of the parents or whatever it is. But it's more of a mental thing at the top end than a physical thing.
It is, for sure. That's why I started this whole mindset mastery coaching thing, because it's so important that kids learn this often. So again, Simon, thank you very much for your time. If any of our viewers want to connect with you, collaborate with you, find out more about your program, where can they get in touch? Where can they find you?
I mean, I'm on socials. I'm not particularly good with this, but I think at Cross Defense is my X handle, Twitter, whatever it used to be called. But I think if anybody wants to go deeper into email bits, info@dcmlr.com would be the one where fire an email to that, and that will come straight through to me. And yeah, I'm more than happy to reach out and help with any kind of young coaches or budding rugby players, stars of the future, whatever it is. I'm more than happy to connect to people. I was very lucky with my journey. A lot of people reached out to me, and I feel if I can give back in any way, I'm more than happy to do that.
Sweet. And what's the website of Old Glory?
It'll be oldglorydc.com.
Oldglorydc.com. Oldglorydc.com. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, thank you again for your time tonight and your insights. It's wonderful. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And so thank you for tuning in. As always, we're here to provide you and your athlete with the content to grow and develop. Join us next week for another episode of Athlete's Edge Coaches Edition podcast. See you there. Thanks.